Welcome. Today we are going to learn how to adapt a battery-operated toy with Andrea Zern from Appalachia Intermediate Unit 8.
Okay, we're switch adapting some toys today. So our first step is to find a battery-operated toy, add your batteries and make sure it works, and then we're going to find our access point. So we have to destruct, take it apart, and kind of figure out where does this turn on? Where do I touch that completes the circuit and activates the toy?
So in the dog, Andrea, it looks like if I press this, it's going to walk or just talk. So somewhere in this part of the unit is what I'm looking for to find that connection.
Yep.
Okay. Wait till we stop. No. It opens the whole way around. So I think by opening this here, we should be able to find it. So thanks to a little bit of muscle strength, upper arm strength, we have the unit separated, and the switch piece that actually activated the dog is now separated from the plastic handle. So there's our switch.
There it is.
Andrea, what are we going to do with this?
Oh gosh, well now we need to add our switch port. So our switch port will plug into our actual mechanical switch. So there's a couple different kinds of switches. This is just a big plate switch, and it's called mechanical because it's actually, you're touching it and it's pushing some apparatus on the inside so that this can be activated then by any part of your head, body, leg, for our kiddos that are having some motoric difficulties, right, and aren't able to isolate to push that button. Okay, so here are our switch buttons, right? And we need to flip it over and see where our connections are. So in order to make the toy activate, we have to complete the circuit. So you have some buttons here on the back, some metal connections, and you'll see that's where things are soldered or connected to. So we need to figure out which connections do we want to make so that when we activate and touch our switch, it will activate the toy. So I have a little piece of test wire that will complete the circuit. So if you revert to circuitry, right, you need to have two pieces that are connected, right? So when we add this, it will shut the circuit and connect it. And we need to kind of take a look. So I think I'm gonna start with the red and the black wires and see what that activates. So as I touch, that activates our talk. So now I'm going to test our white and black and see what that does. And our white and black is our walk. So that's where we're going to want to add and solder our connection port, white to black. All right, so just a note about our test wire. So if you're thinking, well, I don't have a test wire, this is just a piece of regular wire that you can snip off of something that's left over, or maybe find some extra at a hardware store, and it's just clipped, and then the plastic coating is taken off on each end so that each end of the wire is exposed. Again, when you put them on the connection, you'll be able to close that circuit. Okay, so we're now ready to solder. So I've plugged my solder iron in, and I've identified what solder I'm using. And again, we're going to do our ports black to white, right?
Yes, black to white,
Okay.
because we want them to walk.
We're going to do black to white so we can walk. So in order to solder, not that hard, right? Solder irons get very hot. This one's set at 350 Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but
It's pretty hot.
it's hot, right? So we just touch this to our solder. Again, be careful, very, very hot. We just get a little bit of that solder and we place it on the connection port that we want to attach our wire to. So there might be a little steam as we do this.
These are
But
separated.
Charlotte's going to
Can we start with the white, Andrea? Andrea, is that okay?
We can start with white, so just hold that there so that I can add a little solder, and then we're going to add our metal to it. Actually, we need to maybe expose a little bit more of this wire first. So to do that, we can just kind of cut off with a razor blade, or if you have a wire splitter down here. So we just want a little bit more of that covering off so that we have more wire to adhere to our solder. When we went to solder, we noticed that our white here is just a ground wire. There's no point to our wire. So we're going to just test it, right? So our colors might not line up, our black and our white. So I'm going to try black to black and red to white. And then Charlotte's going to close our circuit by activating the switch. So we know now that that's... All right, go ahead and close it again. Okay, so that's where we're going to solder. So we're going to go ahead and get started on that. Here we go. So when you touch your solder, again, your soldering iron is very, very hot to your actual solder. It's going to melt a little bit. You want to position then your melt to your connection port so that your wire can lay on top and adhere. It's kind of like you're taping it permanently. So as I touch, you see some steam and there's some solder, and then I'll quickly go onto my connection port, a little bit more.
We had a little bit of trouble soldering that way, although that is a fine way to solder. So we decided to just take the soldering iron and the solder and connect both wires together and directly solder over them. It does tend to create more lumps, like more big connection points with the solder, which is a little bit sloppy, but overall it seemed to hold it for us, which is why we made the change.
All right, now it's the moment of truth and we're gonna test it. So before you reconstruct, you always want to test to ensure that you have the right connections and that your solders are attached. And just like that, when I touch, he walks. Woo-woo! So we tested with this. It's a little bit easier that way, but now we're going to re-strap this up, right? Our buttons are no longer needed, but we could reattach. So we're just going to house this unit. So we might need to drill a little bit, and then however you want to reattach it, I'll probably use some zip ties just to kind of keep that secured. But so in thinking our dog's now going to walk, so we have a couple different ways. Again, there are many different types of switches. This again is just a portable like plate switch. It's actually called a saucer switch from Enabling Devices. But we also have what are called wireless switches, so that you can activate with a receiver and an input. So the input can be in front of the student if they're sitting in a high chair, at a table, in a wheelchair, and this can be attached to the toy. So we're going to go ahead and house that back up, get our switches attached, and we'll see you back in a second. Okay, so I've attached my wireless switch. Again, here's our receiver, and here's our activator, right? So again, thinking about this being wherever it needs to be, like Miss Charlotte can take it behind me, and she can activate, and we're together. How about that?
I love it.
I just want to point out that I bought this for $3 at my local thrift store. If I were to look this up at a switch company or an assistive technology solution, more than likely this is going to be $100 to $200, and I bought it for $3. And with a $20 soldering kit, we had this in less than like 40 minutes.